It started with the lights. Not a blackout, not a surge, just this faint rhythmic flicker in my living room every night around 9 p.m. like clockwork. My TV would dim for a second, then come back. The first few nights, I shrugged it off. Maybe the old wiring, maybe the AC, but by the fifth night, something felt off. I went outside with a flashlight, still holding my mug of coffee. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Crickets. A soft breeze, the faint hum of something electrical. Then I saw it. A thick orange extension cord snaking out from the side of my garage, trailing across the lawn, through the hedge, and right into my neighbor Karen's driveway. At the end of it, her white Tesla Model Y plugged in and happily charging. For a moment, I just stood there blinking in disbelief. This woman, the same HOA president who once fined me for having a non-regulation bird feeder, was literally stealing my electricity. I yanked the cord from my outlet. The Tesla's charge light went dark. 10 seconds later, I heard it. The sound of a front door slamming. Then came Karen marching down her driveway like a storm in yoga pants. "Excuse me?" she barked. "Did you just unplug my vehicle?" I held up the extension cord. "Your vehicle, Karen. This was plugged into my house." Her eyes narrowed. "Well, the HOA says we're supposed to share utilities for community benefit. You're being incredibly unneighborly right now." I almost laughed. "The HOA says, Karen, this is theft. You're stealing power." She crossed her arms unfazed. "I'll be reporting this attitude. You clearly don't understand how community harmony works." She spun around and stormed back inside, leaving the cord tangled in the grass. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the lights, not even because of the electricity, but because of how confident she was. Like, she truly believed she was above the rules, above the law, above everyone. The next morning, I checked my security footage, and sure enough, there she was, sneaking back at 11:47 p.m., plugging that cord right back in like nothing happened. That's when I decided I was done being polite. If Karen wanted to play games with electricity, I'd give her a real shock. I spent the next day in full mad scientist mode. Coffee, screwdriver, multimeter, the whole setup. My plan wasn't to hurt anyone, just to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. First, I installed a separate outdoor outlet with a hidden power cut switch in the garage. Then, I ran a decoy extension cord, the exact same color and length as the one she'd been using. But this time, the outlet wasn't connected to my house power. It was wired into a small battery inverter and a voltage trip device. If anything heavy, like a car charger, tried to draw current, the system would trip instantly and send a safe surge right back into the line. Nothing dangerous, but definitely enough to fry a charging module. By sunset, my trap was ready. I sat on my porch, pretending to scroll through my phone, waiting. Right on schedule, 9 p.m. My porch light flickered once, then steadied. I peeked around the hedge. There she was, Karen. Hoodie up, flashlight in hand, creeping across the grass like some suburban ninja. She plugged in the cord, gave a satisfied little nod, and marched back toward her house. I couldn't help it. I laughed. She really doesn't learn. I waited 10 minutes. Then I flipped the hidden switch. The silence of the night broke with a faint pop, followed by a whiff of burning plastic. From my porch, I saw a tiny orange glow under her Tesla, and the car's LED charge light began flickering wildly before going dark. Karen's front door flew open. "What the?" She ran out, slippers slapping the pavement, phone in hand, screaming, "My car! My brand new Tesla!" I played dumb, walking over with a flashlight. "Everything okay, Karen?" Her voice shook with rage. It had exploded. "You sabotaged me. You did this on purpose." I pointed to the cord. "Funny because that looks like your setup plugged into my house again." Her jaw trembled. You'll hear from the HOA. This is vandalism." I couldn't help but smile. "You might want to tell them how your Tesla caught fire while you were stealing power." "Should I send them the footage?" She froze. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback, just silence, the kind that hums louder than words. But I didn't realize then that this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the kind of person to back down after humiliation. She was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. My phone was buzzing nonstop with HOA notifications, complaint reports, violation alerts, even a formal letter accusing me of tampering with community property and endangering a resident. Karen had clearly been up all night typing her little heart out. I stepped outside to grab the mail, and there she was standing on her driveway, arms crossed, sunglasses on, sipping coffee like a suburban villain. Her Tesla sat there under a blue tarp, its front bumper blackened from the surge. "Morning," I said. She smiled sweetly. "Enjoying your last day as a homeowner?" I raised an eyebrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh, you'll see," she said, walking back toward her house. "The HOA meeting's tonight. I made sure your name's at the top of the agenda." By evening, I was sitting in a circle of folding chairs inside the community clubhouse surrounded by nosy neighbors whispering like it was a courtroom. At the center table sat Karen, her laptop open, her fake smile wider than ever. "Thank you all for coming," she began, voice syrupy sweet. "We're here to address a serious case of vandalism and harassment that occurred right here in our neighborhood." She turned her laptop toward the group and up came a slideshow of her half-earned Tesla. "This is what happens when people take revenge instead of responsibility." Everyone turned to me. I kept my tone calm. "You left out the part where you stole my electricity for 2 weeks." Karen gave a fake laugh. "Oh, please. You can't prove that." That's when I stood up, pulled out my phone, and hit play. On the TV screen behind me, a clear HD clip from my security camera showed her sneaking across the lawn with the orange cord, plugging it into my outlet and whispering, "Just a few more minutes." The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Karen's face went pale, her mouth twitching. That's edited," she stammered. One of the board members leaned forward. "Karen, that's your robe. That's your voice." And then came the sound that broke her facade completely. Laughter. Actual loud, relieved laughter from the neighbors. Karen stormed out red-faced, slamming the door behind her. But the silence that followed wasn't victory. It was tension. Because everyone knew. People like Karen don't quit. They plot. And that night, when I heard the crunch of gravel outside my house at 2 a.m., I realized she was back. It was past 2 a.m. when I heard it. A slow, deliberate crunch of footsteps on the gravel. I slipped out of bed, heart pounding, and peeked through the blinds. There she was, Karen, hunched near my garage with a flashlight. And was that a gas can? I froze. My brain raced to catch up with what I was seeing. She was mumbling under her breath, waving the flashlight over the same spot she'd plugged into days ago. My security camera light blinked red, catching everything. I stepped out quietly through the back door and came around the front. "You lose something, Karen." She jerked upright, eyes wide, flashlight trembling in her hand. "You can't prove anything. You ruined my car." I pointed to the camera above the garage. "Pretty sure that one just did." She spun toward her Tesla, her voice rising into a full scream. "You destroyed my life. My husband's going to kill me when he finds out. You think you can humiliate me in front of the whole HOA? I tried to keep my voice even. Karen, go home. Before this gets worse," but she wasn't listening. Her hand was shaking as she reached toward the car's charging port, still covered in soot from the last lesson. I could smell the faint chemical tang of gasoline. And then it happened. The spark came from nowhere. A faint snap of static, a flash of blue, and suddenly, whoosh! Flames burst up the side of her Tesla like a torch. Karen screamed and stumbled backward, dropping the gas can as the fire roared to life. I grabbed the hose, yanking it toward the driveway, spraying water as sirens began wailing in the distance. Neighbors poured out onto their lawns, half asleep, clutching their phones. Karen was on the curb crying, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You did this," she kept repeating. "You set me up." When the firefighters arrived, they separated us immediately. One of them pulled me aside after reviewing the camera footage. I showed him on my phone. "Looks like she started it," he said quietly. My security camera light blinked red, catching everything. I stepped out quietly through the back door and came around the front. "You lose something, Karen." She jerked upright, eyes wide, flashlight trembling in her hand. "You can't prove anything. You ruined my car." I pointed to the camera above the garage. "Pretty sure that one just did." She spun toward her Tesla, her voice rising into a full scream. "You destroyed my life. My husband's going to kill me when he finds out. You think you can humiliate me in front of the whole HOA? I tried to keep my voice even. Karen, go home. Before this gets worse," but she wasn't listening. Her hand was shaking as she reached toward the car's charging port, still covered in soot from the last lesson. I could smell the faint chemical tang of gasoline. And then it happened. The spark came from nowhere. A faint snap of static, a flash of blue, and suddenly, whoosh! Flames burst up the side of her Tesla like a torch. Karen screamed and stumbled backward, dropping the gas can as the fire roared to life. I grabbed the hose, yanking it toward the driveway, spraying water as sirens began wailing in the distance. Neighbors poured out onto their lawns, half asleep, clutching their phones. Karen was on the curb crying, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You did this," she kept repeating. "You set me up." When the firefighters arrived, they separated us immediately. One of them pulled me aside after reviewing the camera footage. I showed him on my phone. "Looks like she started it," he said quietly. Sometimes it comes with a projector screen and a room full of witnesses. And as the cycus hummed in the dark, I couldn't help but smirk. Guess the HOA finally met its match. If you've ever had to stand your ground against unfair power, hit like. It shows you're not alone. Subscribe to Karen's Hub so you never miss true stories of everyday people fighting back and winning. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if it were your pool?